Alright, this is what avoidants actually want to hear from you when they shut down according to science. So before you is a heart. But notice this isn't like any normal heart. You'll see that it's divided into 4 quadrants. Now each of these quadrants is meant to represent what an avoidant secretly wants to hear from you when they shut down. But notice, this heart is kind of blacked out. It's not lit up. So the game here is simple. I'm going to pick a quadrant, tell you what avoidants hope to hear from you, and boom, the quadrant will suddenly light up. The name of the game, of course, is to light the whole heart up, and then, and only then, the avoidant's heart is yours. See what I did there? That's because, as you'll soon find out, each of the things the avoidant hopes to hear is connected. They build on top of each other. But I did say something about science though, didn't I? Well, last year I interviewed a woman named Regina who actually got her avoidant ex back. That's not the interesting part. What is interesting is how she did it. See, throughout our interview, Regina said a handful of things that instantly changed how her avoidant responded to her. These little moments that made him start opening up right after he shut down. So what I'm going to do is pull directly from that conversation, word for word, and then break down the psychology behind each line. So let's start first with the upper left quadrant of our heart. If it's meant to be, it'll be. I wish you the best. All right, let's roll the clip.
So I was just like, okay. So I was like, it's got to be something else. Like, there's no way that's what it is. So I was like, you know what, whatever. It hurts, but if it's meant to be, it'll be meant to be,
So a bit of context here. Regina is in the midst of being broken up with. Her avoidant is literally giving her some excuse for why they can't be together. She's not buying his excuse. You can see that when she's like, there's no way that's what it is. But she just kind of shrugs her shoulders and says, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And then walks away. There's a lot of layers to explain why I think this worked, and I promise I'll get to the science of it, but I'd like to start first with my own little theory. You see, I believe that every avoidant has an expectation of how they expect you to react upon being rejected. This expectation is based on life experience. They've likely dated someone in the past who didn't react well to it, so they come up with these lies to soften the breakup blow in order to avoid this overreaction. But Regina didn't overreact, and as a result, she short-circuited his expectation. And when that happens, well, it's a little like holding up a mirror to someone who spent their whole lives avoiding their own reflection. They expect chaos and blame, but instead they're forced to look at themselves. It's disarming and even a little haunting, but what's the science behind it? Well, have you ever heard of the freedom threat experiment? Psychologists wanted to test what happens in the human mind when our sense of choice gets taken away. They began with a simple setup. College students were invited to rate how much they liked a series of everyday consumer items, things like records and candy and magazines. Oh, I should also mention that the experiment took place in the 60s when records were kind of a big deal. After the initial ratings, each participant was told they could choose one of 2 items to take home. But secretly, without realizing it, the participants were split into 2 groups. You had the free choice group. These participants were told they could freely choose whichever item they wanted. They made their pick, and that was that. And then you had the restricted choice group. These folks were told mid-decision that one of the 2 items was no longer available. So their freedom to choose had just become limited. Someone else had decided for them. Then, after this subtle act of control, the psychologists asked both groups to re-rate how desirable each item seemed. The results were about what you would expect. The restricted choice participants suddenly rated the unavailable item as far more desirable than they had before. It taught a valuable lesson to the world. It wasn't necessarily about the object itself. It was about autonomy. That spike in desirability that those restricted items had was the first clear behavioral proof of psychological reactance. The brain's defensive surge that says, you can't tell me what to do, actually existed. All right, so what does this even have to do with Regina? Well, in her situation, her avoidant was the restricted choice participant. When he breaks up with her, he's essentially saying, look, I'm taking this option U off the table. But Regina doesn't respond normally, or at least in a way that he's expecting her to respond. That's the whole, if it's meant to be, it'll be. See, by saying that, she handed him back his freedom, and at that moment, she flips this experiment. Instead of becoming the unavailable item he had to resist or devalue to justify his choice, She became the one thing that he was free to come back to. And that simple act of giving him space dismantled the very psychological reactance that fuels most avoidance after a breakup. But I'm getting way off topic. Let's move to that upper right quadrant of our heart. You're gonna see what my life is like without you in it. Once again, I'm gonna let Regina take it away.
As hard as it was, I just completely blocked him out of my mind. I didn't look at his social media. I didn't look at his work website because he owns his own business. Like, I stayed out of his circle. We have a couple of mutual friends. I didn't intervene. I didn't ask about him. I just kind of cut him off, and I just wanted him to see, okay, you don't want me to be a part of your life. Well, this is what that looks like. This is me not in your life. Just like you said, that you wanted it, here you are.
I kind of love this. This woman should be your spirit animal. I believe this is contrast exposure at its finest. For those who aren't in the know, contrast exposure is the psychological jolt you feel when something familiar suddenly disappears. The brain has a built-in comparison system. It notices change, not consistency. So when Regina disappears from his life, she creates that contrast. Before, he could just take her presence for granted, but after, he had to confront the silence she left behind. And most importantly, she's willing to just let things be silent. She's willing to let him suffer. Look, I know I'm going to get flack for saying this, but avoidants don't come back when they are happy. In fact, they don't come back at all when they're happy. Just look at my avoidant death wheel. They're technically only happy during 2 stages of that thing. You have stage 2, the I found someone I'm so happy stage, which is essentially just a honeymoon period. They aren't coming back during that because they're already in a relationship with you. And then, of course, you have stage 6, which is the separation elation phase, which I've also referred to as a mini honeymoon period. They're not coming back because they're overjoyed to be free finally. No, an avoidant coming back doesn't happen until they are miserable. And that usually happens during stages 7 and 8. The why is this always happening to me and the I'm so freaking lonely stages. These aren't happy moments. These are severe contrast moments. They compare how they were feeling during those happy times to how they're feeling during the hard times now. But if you're sitting there nursing them back to health, like, oh, I'm so sorry, avoidant, let me make you feel better, then there's no contrast. There's just one person making a fool of themselves and the other person just taking advantage of it. Regina, well, she was willing to let her avoidance suffer. And to further prove that point, let's move on to the lower left quadrant of our heart. Actually, before we do that, I've had people ask me, Chris, how do you get all these interviews with these experts or these people who got avoidance back? Well, that's exactly what we do inside the Reconnection Room. It's my private community where my coaches and I get on live every single week, every Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for group coaching sessions. We break down your situation in real time, we share success stories like Regina's, and we help you understand exactly what stage of the avoidance cycle you're in and how to respond without triggering them. And no, this isn't some monthly fee to get access to it. Like always, if you've been watching this on YouTube, you'll be eligible for a massive 50% discount for lifetime access. Just a one-time payment of $97 and you're in forever. Now, if you're interested, simply click in the link in the description. All right, ad read over. Let's light up the next quadrant of our heart. I'm calling this the no pressure redefinition of a relationship quadrant. Once again, I'm going to let Regina take it.
As far as like the end goal for me, it was basically just, are we going to be able to rebuild a solid foundation for when all that's gone? When there's no more kids and when we're just looking at retirement and we're alone all the time. Like, is that going to be enough? Like, will we care enough about each other? So for me, that's once I let go of all the other pressure of moving in together, or I need a baby daddy, and he realized it also, that's really kind of like the turning point for us when we were like, okay, so like we can just define our own relationship and then build what this looks like and not really care about what the outside world or our families are like. Why aren't you getting married and moving in? Or like,
one of the consistent themes you'll see on my YouTube channel is me banging the drum, constantly telling people to move on, to let go. Now, it's interesting, watching that little video of Regina back, did you notice the word she used? Once I let go of all the pressure. Not really care about what the outside world or our families thought. This is like catnip to an avoidant. It's their hidden love language, and Regina is without a doubt speaking it. But why? Well, I think what Regina taps into here with this one is really one of the most powerful motivators in human behavior: autonomy. Have you ever heard of the self-determination theory? All right, so before you on the screen are 3 circles that are overlapping to create a Venn diagram. Now, according to self-determination theory, people can only experience genuine closeness when 3 psychological needs are met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So the middle, right here, is what's required for a human being to experience closeness. The trick when it comes to avoidance is 2 of those needs are relatively easy to get from them: competence and relatedness. But it's that pesky third need, autonomy, the feeling that I'm free to choose. That's the one that avoidants guard most fiercely. And it's precisely why most people fail in relationships with them. The avoidant never allows themselves to feel close because that middle overlap isn't complete. So I suppose the question becomes, how in the world do you unlock autonomy? Well, let's go back to Regina. When she does her no expectations, no pressure, no caring about what their families thought, she unknowingly did what therapists call autonomy restoration. Basically, when someone's sense of choice and self-direction is given back to them after feeling controlled or pressured. Regina removed the hidden shoulds. We should move in. We should get married. We should prove this to other people, and replace them with permission. We can define our own relationship. We don't need to do this stuff that society expects. And that brings us to the lower right quadrant of our heart. I care enough to make it safe for you to open up.
Like your emotional, like if you're a dismissive avoidant, and like
the attachment styles, the anxious, avoidant, fearful, secure.
Yeah, that was really helpful information,
Mm-hmm.
not only for myself, but when I thought about Potato as his own person and what his journey has been up to this point to where we're together. So if I could understand a little bit about where those wounds come from, it was a lot easier for me to be a better partner for him.
Yeah.
And just like I kind of just showed him very nonchalantly, like, I am a good partner for you. I care enough about you to want to like make it be safe and like let you open up in an organic way, you know.
I'm totally going to do a cop-out here. I made a statement at the very beginning of this video, if you remember. The name of the game is to light the whole heart up. I think you just can pull what I said word for word. This last quadrant of our heart, it's literally only possible because of every other quadrant that lit up before it. Think about it for a second. You can't make an avoidant feel safe to open up if their system is still in defense mode. That's what the first quadrant fixed. When Regina said, if it's meant to be, it'll be. She removed the freedom threat. She didn't chase, she didn't fight, and in doing that, she lowered their walls just enough for their nervous system to stop bracing against you. Then, of course, comes the second quadrant. You're gonna see what my life is like without you in it. That created contrast. It forced them to actually feel the absence. It's not a punishment, it's clarity. It's the realization that life without you is quieter, emptier, and not what they imagine. By the time we get to the third quadrant, no pressure, no expectations, no caring what anyone thinks, that's where autonomy is truly restored. Regina's not trying to control the outcome anymore. She's given her avoidant back the one thing their entire attachment system revolves around: the freedom to choose. And once she did that, this happens. The fourth quadrant lights up. I care enough to make it safe for you to open up. Notice, this isn't anything she says. It's not words, it's more, it's trust. Because you can't talk an avoidant into feeling safe. You can't logic them into intimacy. Their nervous system doesn't respond to language. It responds to consistency, to energy, to presence. And it's all only possible because all the groundwork before it made their nervous system feel safe enough to stop running. Freedom first, silence second, permission third. Only then do you get safety. Safety isn't something you say to an avoidant. It's something you build, one quadrant at a time.